Hello, everyone. Mark Rosen with you with another podcast edition of Rosen Sports Monday on a Tuesday. A little rainy Tuesday, but I'm kind of used to that. I had the weekend off, the bye weekend, the Vikings bye weekend. The only time my wife Karen, who of course is gainfully employed by the Vikings, we could get away and took our first visit to Charleston, South Carolina, and loved the city. The weather, not so much. It followed me back here to the Twin Cities, at least for today. A lot of rain, but man, we had a great time with some friends. Great foodie town, wonderful museum, the history. You realize where you're walking and what's happened in that city. And it had a lot of fun. And she bought a sweet 1970s vintage Vikings jacket as well, which is really cool. So, usually, she's looking at shoes, she's looking at this, she got a Vikings jacket. Now that's cool. Anyway, it's nice to be back. And my special guest today, of course, the guy who knows more about puck than pretty much anybody, including Michael Russo. Kevin Gorg is with us. Gorg, good to see you, my man. Wearing your Minnesota Wild sweatshirt.
Yeah, welcome home. It feels like the Vikings haven't been in town forever.
I know. I was looking at the schedule, and we're going, obviously, covering the game, doing my Fox 9 pregame show on Sunday. That's the first home game they've had like on a month.
I know.
Think about it.
Bizarre.
It's a noon game.
Chomping at the bit, and it could be a fun game with Carson Wentz going against his former club.
Yeah, it looks like it's all pointing towards that. Hey, before we start our conversation, wanted to thank our sponsors, Lexus Voizetta, Lexus Maplewood, Charlie Swanson, of course, and of course, Stretch Lab. We'll talk about them as well in just a few minutes. Love my folks at Stretch Lab as well. Well, Kevin, let's start with, and there was so much last night. My remote control burned out. It looked at me going, what are you doing? I mean, 2 NFL games. I don't know why they do that on Monday night. That we can get into that. And only an hour apart. So you're flipping around baseball playoff games, captivating. And then of course the Minnesota Wild were playing. And if you missed the first period, you missed a lot.
You did.
So let's start with that. And let's start our conversation. Let's hit the old. Let's back up the machine a little bit here. And I texted you when the Kaprizov stuff was going on and the negotiations, we want to call it that, and how hush-hush and people were starting to hit that panic button a little bit. And you said, take a chill pill. Everything's going to be okay. I've talked about it on Common Show that it will get done. And if it doesn't get done, they're going to have to trade him in a hurry. But you were pretty confident that they would come to an agreement. Did the terms of the agreement, did the length of the contract surprise you at all?
The length didn't surprise me. I think the money was a little bit for all of us like, holy cow. I was thinking more in the neighborhood of 16. Lou Nanne never backed down. In fact, Lou Nanne had it right all along as far as the terms of the agreement went. The reason I didn't think he was going anywhere is because I've had the chance to get to know Kirill. When you travel with the team, when you're at practice every day, you get to know these guys, and he loves it here. Like, he absolutely loves the Twin Cities. He can be left alone. He doesn't. I don't think he would ever enjoy the big lights, the big city like a New York and L.A. or Chicago. And I think he believes, and I think the contract speaks to this, that this team can win, that Bill Guerin has put together a roster right now, a good mixture of veterans and youth that can win and make a run. And so I never thought he was leaving. I'll be the first to admit that once training camp got started and he was on the ice and we were getting ready to play preseason games, I'm like, wait a minute, if this guy gets hurt, at that point I got a little nervous, like this needs to happen. In the end, it looks like it's going to be important for him to stay healthy. But other than that, I mean, he looks like the same guy we saw last year when he was the favorite all the way through Christmas to be the league MVP.
So Kirill's what, 28, 27, 28?
28. Okay.
So you do the math, and you know the NHL quite well, and we've seen some great examples of it. Obviously, take the superstars, the Ovechkins and Sidney Crosby's that play at a really high level. Are there a lot of cases of guys in their mid-30s that can play this game, that have played this game at the highest possible level still?
It's a rare talent that can. You mentioned two names right now that are still here as we get in that 40 neighborhood, Ovechkin and Crosby. Those are unique and special talents. They've got the passion to do it. And I think if you get to know Kirill and peel back a couple of layers, there's a comparison there somewhere to Sidney Crosby. A couple of people, Bill Guerin, who's had him both in Pittsburgh and here, knows Crosby well. And then Alex Goligoski, Minnesota's own from Grand Rapids, played with both. and compared them the same way they train, the same way they practice, being almost myopic in how much they just care about the game and training and playing the game of hockey. It supersedes everything else in their lives, and they're obsessed with that skill. So that tells me Kirill can play into his late 30s and still be effective. Father time, as we all know, comes for everybody. So we'll see how that plays out. I think on the early part of this contract, when the cap goes up in the next 3 or 4 years, this is going to end up being more than a fair deal for the team. And I think as fans take a look at that number and try to digest that he's the highest paid player in the league, that won't last forever. And remember, you've got a guy like Matt Boldy, who you're paying $7 million a year on a 7-year deal, which looks right now like you're stealing.
Yeah, he's a talent who's, as they say, you got to be patient with some players. We'll get into that as well when we get into the Vikings a little bit. But the length of the contract, I mean, Connor McDavid signed a 3-4 year deal?
2-year deal.
2-year deal.
At 12.5 apiece. And what he's trying to do.
You?
Well, the length did not, because I think he wants to really, after these 2 years, seriously explore other options, because the window could be closing in Edmonton. Can they afford both Draisaitl and McDavid at fair numbers? And McDavid's next contract will likely be closer to 20. Can they afford both those guys and still put together a competitive roster? That remains to be seen. And, you kind of feel like Edmonton's had this window, and they've been to the back-to-back Stanley Cups. And I think McDavid's smart enough to realize that you're not going to just keep going to the Cup. The Western Conference is really tough. I mean, deep and difficult. So he gave himself some options with that 2-year deal. He took a lot less money so they could stay competitive right now, knowing he's going to get paid in 2 years.
Well, Bill Guerin made it clear, and he was asked before Kirill signed. I think everyone acknowledged it. Had they not signed him, it would have set this franchise, the Wild franchise, back 5 years. Put a number on it.
Right.
It would have been devastating, because these players don't fall off of trees, as they say, and they had him scouted. They signed him when they did, and we're seeing already early in the season why he's the straw that stirs the drink. No doubt about that, especially on the power play so far.
Well, it's the numbers speak for themselves, and you can watch the game and see how good the power play is and know that this guy's a special talent. I take it back to the bottom line. When you're in a business of running a pro franchise, you have to be entertaining. And I will challenge Wild fans to watch games when he's playing and when he's not playing. It is significantly more fun to watch the Minnesota Wild when Kirill Kaprizov is on the ice. He is one of those players, and very few. If you look at the NHL and you look at the 25 years we've had Wild hockey, how many players literally, when they're on the ice and their shift, bring you to the edge of your seat when you're at a game?
Gaborik
is the only other guy I can name.
One I can think of.
Listen, Mikko Koivu was a great player, but not like this guy. And he's one of one with his skill set. He can do some remarkable things on the ice. So I'm with you, Rosie. If they would have lost him, if they would have been forced into a situation where they had to trade Kirill Kaprizov, it would have been one of the darker clouds over this organization they've ever seen.
The kid who signed, I call him a kid, who got the game-winning goal in the shootout last night, Marco Rossi, was one of those guys that, people had kind of different opinions about it, or than the Wild probably did as well. Are we going to reinvest in him? A young guy, really hadn't come into his own yet. But what are your thoughts about Marco Rossi and his future here in Minnesota now?
Well, Rosie, it's hard to argue with what this kid's done. You look back at 3 years ago when he got a little cup of coffee at the NHL level, played 19 games and had 1 assist. Then the next year, he was able to go out there and play a significantly better brand of hockey and posted 40 points. Then last year, 60 points. So he's ascending. Looks like a guy this year that could legitimately put up around 80 points. He's centering the top line. The biggest question marks about Marco Rossi aren't his work ethic or the type of kid he is, because he's a fantastic teammate. He's beloved in that locker room. It's when the rink gets a little bit smaller come playoff time, and you're playing a big, rugged team. And I'll go back to that Vegas series. Can he still be as effective?
Yeah, and that's the question mark. We're watching some really entertaining, high-scoring early season games right now. We got the goaltending situation. The 5-on-5 hasn't been real successful. The power play has been out of sight. But Kevin, no one has to tell you there's a big difference between October hockey and the hockey you have to play come playoff time. And what makes the Florida Panthers type teams so damn effective and so almost impossible to beat in the playoffs.
You have to have a large degree of grit and physical and that sandpaper style to be effective in the playoffs. Florida has found the winning combination like other teams have, where you've got enough skill, but you've got enough grit to play multiple styles of hockey. The Stanley Cup playoffs will test you because you've got 4 consecutive 7-game series. And this is NHL hockey, knockdown, drag out, in your face, physical hockey that is exhausting when you talk to these players that have been through it. And you have to have a team that's built, that's deep, and can play both styles. They can't just be one way or the other. And so for Minnesota, you're going to have some players like Marco Rossi, but you better have a Ryan Hartman or a Marcus Foligno to kind of counteract some of that smaller speed.
Is Bill Guerin? No one knows that more than Bill Guerin in terms of how to build, that type of a team. And you mentioned a couple of the players he has, but is that a process that has to continue under his tutelage that to make this Wild team, not just to get past the first round, but to truly become a Stanley Cup champion contending team?
Yeah, and I think for once he's got some flexibility to see what he's got during the season and be aggressive at the deadline. He hasn't had any wiggle room the last couple of years, and there have been significant deficiencies with this club that he could not address come trade deadline time. So now this year, they're going to have room to make a couple of moves, and knowing Billy Guerin, they're likely going to do it. And one of the areas to watch with this hockey team is, you've got these 2 superstars in Boldy and Kaprizov, and it's really fun to have them stacked right now on the top line. I don't think that is sustainable come playoff time when teams can really lock you down and shut you down. You've got to have them separated. So now you need 2 lines that can score. And so I still think that their top 5 when Zuccarello's healthy, pretty much self-explanatory. That next in-line player. I know Ogren's been given a look during training camp, and he's not quite ready for that. They've tried Johansson. They've tried Foligno. There is a player out there somewhere that can help this hockey team. And the team I keep coming back to is the Buffalo Sabres. They're off to another tough start, and they might be looking to rebuild, which means they might be desperate to make a move. And Bill Guerin has all these assets right now. Their scouting staff's done a remarkable job at building up good young talent in their pool right now. So maybe at the trade deadline, you can package up some existing players, some draft picks, and some young talent. And the name that keeps coming to my mind is Tage Thompson. He is a superstar forward. He's a 40-goal scorer on a bad hockey team last year, and Buffalo might be a willing trade partner.
What would you have to give up to get a guy like that?
A ton.
That's what I was going to say. Do you have any resources?
I think you'd have to give up something that exists right now on your roster of value. You have to give up a young prospect, and you'd have to probably give up a first-round draft pick. But if you're the Minnesota Wild and you're in a playoff position come trade deadline, and you've got this window of time where Kirill Kaprizov is in his prime and Matt Boldy is a rising superstar and Brock Faber and Zeev Boyum, they're all right here. Why not? Why not go all in and make that move, knowing that now you've got to win probably in the next 2 or 3 years? It looks like this team has that opportunity in front of them.
I think back, one of the most fun times I ever had covering sports was back in 2003, the most unexpected run to the Western Conference Finals with a gritty hockey team. Granted, Gabrick was on. Yeah, he was on the team.
He was a rookie. He was the only real star.
They beat Vancouver after being down 3-1. Beat Colorado down 3-1 when Andrew Burnett scored that famous goal, and that team had a lot of grit. They had star players, but no one expected them to be there. In fact, a lot of those guys, and they were back here for the game Saturday night. I'm talking about Jacques Lemaire and Mario Tremblay and Bob. The coaching staff all came back, and I'm sure great memories walking in the building, no matter what happened after that fact.
Yeah, remarkable season. It was actually Gabrick's 3rd year. He was a rookie when the Wild were kind of born in 2000. But going back to that, he was the only real star player they had, and they built that team around Jacques Lemaire's style, which was a tight checking, responsible game. Players like Wes Walz and Darby Hendrickson made huge contributions. They had the 2 goalies with Rolison and Manny Fernandez.
It was fun.
It was great to connect with Coach Lemaire over the weekend. He was back at morning skate. We had a chance to visit and go through some of those memories from, in both those series. But I think the stories that Wes Walz and Darby Hendrickson have told me is that opening series when they're playing the Avalanche. Coaches always have those whiteboards in the locker room, and it has both teams' line combinations. And the Wild players were looking up at that board before the series, and you're looking at Colorado, and you're seeing Sakic and Forsberg and Patrick Waugh. There's these 5 cinch Hall of Famers. And they're looking at their board, and they're seeing a bunch of ham and eggers. And Jacques Lemaire had a way of showing them before the series, like, they've got the bigger names, but there's a way to do this. There is a path to victory if we do X, Y, and Z. So the Wild come out in both those playoff series wins and win the first game and lose the next three. Down 3-1 in that series, going back on the road, and they're able to come back in back-to-back series down 3-1. It's never happened in the National Hockey League. Hasn't happened since, and I don't think, without Jacques Lemaire, any of that happens. He was just a remarkable coach that could just adapt to the talent that he had. And to your point, it was a magical run because nobody, and I mean nobody, saw it coming.
And then they got shut down by Giguère, the goaltender from Anaheim.
And
it was so boring.
The first game, though,
yeah, they had
ABC, nationally televised, afternoon game 1. The Wild, as the 7 seed, had home ice because Anaheim was the 8 seed.
That's right.
Wild outshot him like 42-20.
And he was a brick wall.
And he shut him out. And from that point on, the Wild had no answer for those.
He was wearing
pads.
those. You're a former goalie. He was wearing those illegal goalie pads.
They were huge. And after that, the league had to crack down.
Did they?
They adjusted a year later and had goaltenders, had to kind of apply to what size worked and what size was over the edge. And his were deemed way too big. And it wasn't just his leg pads. It was all of his equipment. He looked like the Michelin man out there.
He was unbeatable that time. There are a couple, and we'll talk more Wild, obviously, as the season goes on. There's a couple of big hockey events. One of them, of course, we're hosting here. That's the World Junior Tournament coming up at the end of December. For folks who don't know, why don't you talk about the level of talent we're going to see and giving people a chance to see the up-and-coming stars, not just, obviously, in the United States, but around the world. Yeah,
it's a world event, and I think if you've ever been, able to watch this on TV, a lot of times they play it in Canada, where it is treated like the Super Bowl. I kid you not, their coverage. I mean, they're covering morning skates, they're covering everything all day. It's like the Super Bowl in Canada. But the beauty of the World Juniors is you are seeing the future stars in the National Hockey League. Each country brings their very best, and these are the 18-year-old kids, the 19-year-old kids that are going to be can't miss in the draft, can't miss players on rosters. Looking back over the years, players like Ovechkin, Sidney Crosby, Connor McDavid, Kirill Kaprizov. These are all the players you're going to see, but before they're NHL stars. The level of competition's unbelievable, and a lot like the Olympics, these kids take so much pride in these games. So the emotion involved in these games, it's going to be a treat for the fans.
And speaking of the Olympics, this is an Olympic year, and the NHL is shutting down for, 3 weeks? And
February, we have like 4 games. We're 3 weeks of zero team activities.
What are your thoughts about, it's not Olympic hockey, but I mean, there's a lot of passion involved. I mean, we were talking, Alex and I, our producer, were talking about the Four Nations tournament they had before. Now, Russia's not allowed to compete in it.
I know.
Right? Which sucks.
It's sorry. A bummer. I'm with you.
The politics that get involved with this.
It's a bummer.
So Kaprizov can't play. Obviously, Ovechkin, can't play for Russia. And it's too bad, but that's the way that the rules are going, I guess. But it's still going to be exceptional hockey to watch.
Well, the Four Nations was incredible. And I think it opened the eyes to people like me. And I got to be honest, I come into this being a child of 1980 when I was 13 years old and watched the greatest sporting event of my life. Like, Miracle on Ice in my world will never be topped. As far as sporting events going,
no.
I know you were there. Listen, that will never be topped. And so you don't have that aspect of these kids doing this great thing. But I'll say this, that can never be duplicated because at the time they were playing professionals and they were just the college kids. So wipe that away and knowing that this is really good for the NHL and it's really good for hockey fans to see the best players in the world. And hopefully when some of the real issues that matter in this world get cleaned up and we come back for another Winter Olympics, we can have Russia be a part of this again because you want to see the best of the best. And without players like Kirill Kaprizov and Ovechkin and some of these wonderful talents, it's not going to be quite the same. But if the Four Nations was any indication of the quality of play we're going to get, it's going to be pretty cool. I
don't want to compare it to like a Ryder Cup thing. It's bigger than that in the context of what the sport means. But I would assume like the Bill Guerins of the world get a little nervous when they send all these GMs send their players away, and you're playing at the highest possible level. They want that gold medal.
They do. And the risk you run for sure is all these general managers are holding their breath because it's all their best players. Last year during the Four Nations, Brodin got nicked up. Eck got nicked up. I mean, it's a fact. Like, It's physical. It's emotional. They're putting everything they got into these games. So the flip side is if you lose players, is the juice worth the squeeze? Because it's great exposure for the National Hockey League to have their players on this stage. I mean, it's wonderful. And the NHL right now, Rosie's in a really good place. I know Michael Russo has talked about this a lot, but the popularity of hockey is really starting to get some real traction right now, and they've got the right players in place, and then the Four Nations last year with some of the bad blood and the Kachuk brothers, like there's a lot of meat on this bone for young fans that are maybe new to hockey to say, hey, there's something here I want to watch.
When you got Charles Barkley going on the basketball network talking about, I'm watching the Stanley Cup playoff.
Priceless, by the way.
That was only Sir Charles could get away with that on a competing
they need
network.
Him more than he needs them.
Exactly.
Amen.
Oh my goodness. Hey, we're going to take a break, come back and talk more about what's going on in the local sports scene, including the quarterback situation with the Minnesota Vikings. But I want to talk to you about Stretch Lab. I've been going out to the facility out in Eden Prairie, where my nephew first got me signed up and said, you got to go to this place. And I went, yeah, okay, I'm a little older than you are. He's 30, I'm older. But I've been going weekly, and I've been hooked ever since. There are locations throughout the Twin Cities. And to me, I've mentioned it's like close to a 50-minute meditation session. Jason, my guy, stretches out my legs, my hips, my back, and my traps, all of it. And I feel like a new man walking out of there. And it really is so important to your daily routine. No matter if you're a runner, lifting weights, whatever it is, stretching is the key, I think, to your overall health in terms of your body, the way you can handle your body in the most peculiar situations. So go out to Stretch Lab, check them out, give them a chance, and for your overall health. Check them out at a location near you. Hey, Rosie here for Lexus of Wayzata and Lexus of Maplewood. If you're in the market for a new luxury vehicle, look no further than my good friend Charlie Swanson at Lexus. Whether you're on the west or the east side of the Twin Cities, they have got you covered with two great locations, Lexus of Wayzata and Lexus of Maplewood. Check out the all-new Lexus TX, a spacious SUV with 3 rows of seating and plenty of room for all your gear. Head over to LexusofWayzata.com or LexusofMaplewood.com for details and to find your next ride today.
Hey everyone, John Krasinski here to celebrate with you that football season is finally upon us. Join me on the Viking Update Show for all the latest action, insights, and stories from the field. Jim Suin and I will have everything you need on our podcast on the Talk North Podcast Network.
And welcome back to Rosen Sports Monday on this Tuesday, and talking with Kevin Gorg. And we were chatting before we started recording this wonderful show today, talking about how busy everything was in the sports scene last night with the remote control and all that's going on. And we talked a little baseball, and I went, the Dodgers. Payroll. We always get involved with payroll. The NFL's got the salary. Baseball doesn't have a salary cap. The Dodgers I'm watching them in the dugout, and they won the World Series last year over the Yankees. And I'm not saying they're smug, but they're smug. They know they're damn good. And they lost to the Brewers, I think 6 straight times, during the regular season. Last night they found a way to win Game 1.
Of course they did.
It's only Game 1, but the number 1 payroll against the little guys. And I think we can say what you want about Milwaukee and everything. Man, I'm a Brewer fan, like a lot of folks are right now, but got to admire the team they have, and it's hard to beat those guys.
I'll preface it, Rosie, by saying, as a sports fan, I am in love with Shohei Ohtani. I think he's like a unicorn, man. Like, seeing him, I am blown away as a baseball fan of what this guy can do. So I'll start there and say he's really cool. But, everything, in my opinion, that's wrong with baseball is what this series is all about. You've got a small market team. You've got a big market team with no ends to funds and to their credit, they've put together a hell of a club, and they are really good. So yeah, I'm cheering for the Brewers. I think a lot of baseball fans are cheering for the Brewers, but in the end, the Dodgers are going to be a damn tough team to beat because they're deep and they've got the pitching. And, they showed that again last night. The Brewers have a really good offensive outfit, but they couldn't get much going at all.
Well, we've seen the Yankees try to buy themselves a World Series. It's been a long time since they've won one, but it's an indication of the haves and the have-nots that Major League Baseball is dealing with. Meanwhile, in the American League, the best feel-good story, and also scratching your head going, oh yeah, a guy named Jorge Polanco has been hitting
Familiar.
3-run home runs and 3-run home runs and helping Seattle, which I don't think has ever won a World Series.
They've never been to one.
I don't think, and this would be, I mean, if, you know, and I love the city. I know you do too. I love the city of Toronto.
Yes.
I love the passion they have for their baseball team. Obviously their hockey team, the Maple Leafs, they've been dying with for how many decades now?
Heartbreakers.
You
just
know that.
heartbreakers.
I think we're tough. It's hard here. This is their sport there.
Yes.
They cannot get over the hump. But for Polanco in Seattle, and who did he hit the home run off of? Oh, Louis Varland, the former Twin, the 3-run homer. So, but there's a feel good story right now developing in Seattle as well with their catcher hitting the 60 home runs. And that would be a fun real World Series if it ends up being Seattle against the Dodgers.
It would be. And Seattle has some magic. You know, they've had that all year long.
Mm-hmm.
The big dumper, as they call this guy. He's phenomenal.
Catches every inning.
Every inning. Like, people talk about all his offensive attributes, the 60-plus home runs, but how tough is it to sit out there and play that many games at that position and still be relevant at the plate? He's remarkable. And all those years with Ken Griffey Jr., when they mentioned that they had yet to be to a World Series, I had to take a think back, like, no, they didn't get there. They were always good, but never great.
I will tell you, in 2001, right after 9/11, I felt my mom grew up in Brooklyn, so I felt kind of a calling to go out to New York and support the city in any way I could, and took my family out there. My son was 15, 16, something like that, and I took the 4 train out to old Yankee Stadium.
Oh yeah,
and Seattle was playing the Yankees, and who was playing for Seattle? A guy named Alex Rodriguez. And so I got tickets out in the left field bleachers somewhere. I didn't care. I was in the stadium, and it was emotional, goosebump city with everything going on out there in New York. And Seattle actually won that game. And they unfortunately they didn't end up winning the series. I think was that the year Arizona
ended up winning
beat the
World
Yankees.
Series. Yeah.
So but it was special to go out there, and you realize it's been that long. But watching Polanco and watching this series and watching the excitement level, no matter where the games are being played. And I think back here just a few years ago, going down to Target Field when the Twins were in the postseason, finally winning a postseason series for the first time after 0-18, whatever the streak was, we know that. And here we sit today, and we're watching other baseball teams. The Twins don't have a manager. We don't know who the ownership's going to be. If maybe it's still going to be the Pohlads in some capacity. I guess it will. Limited partners. There's so many questions to be answered, and more than anything, there's just this rampant apathy about it. I mean, people are mad, but they're more than that, they just don't care. And that's the worst possible feeling to have at this moment, to think, well, how are you in the sales office at the Minnesota Twins right now, picking up the phone or sending out emails to your season ticket holders? Hey, come on back. We're selling what?
Yeah, it's tough. I go back to what we talked about in the first segment about being entertaining. The ballpark is spectacular. I mean, Target Field is a wonderful. I went to 2 games this year. Now, the backstory is in those 2 games, they were outscored 31-6. That's a fact. I didn't care. I had a good time.
Yeah.
But if you're long-term looking at this pragmatically, are people going to spend the money? There is a lot of anger in this town over ownership. And we just watched the owner of the Wild empty his pockets to keep his superstar in town. And there are only so many dollars for the average American family, and we'll go to the Twin Cities, the average Twin Cities family to go to a Timberwolves game, a Gopher football game, a Viking game, or a Twins game. They have to figure this out. And if they don't want to spend the money, that's fine. Then sell the team and move on. But you can't run it the way you're running it right now and think it's going to be successful.
Well, you could be in college football where James Franklin's going to get paid about $48 million for saying goodbye.
How about that?
And getting fired. And I know there's some ins and outs with Adidas buying him out, and Penn State could say if he's got to go look for another job, poor guy. And if it's $8 million or whatever, they don't have to make up for the difference. It exposed the fallacy of what college football is supposed to be about. We know with NIL and the transfer portal and everything else, but I went, what? $48 million to go away? That's a hell of a nice severance package.
If I'm James Franklin and I'm in my early 50s and I have the opportunity to cash out for most of that, I don't know if I ever have the real urge to get back into that with the NIL, with the portal, with the pressure, with social media. When I can rake nearly $50 million and maybe I can call a CBS or an ESPN and moonlight on the weekends as their college football coaching analyst, I don't know why I'd get back there and go into the pressures of being a head coach when I can cash out for that much money at in his mid-50s.
Right.
No
Friday night's going to be fun because, I don't know, maybe 30,000 Nebraska fans will be rolling into town. It'll be the big red machine rolling in over to Huntington Bank Stadium. Meanwhile, I'm going to be parked over at U.S. Bank Stadium going to see a guy named Paul McCartney.
I've heard of him.
And I'm telling you, this is going to be a crazy downtown. I don't know why they're playing the game Friday. I can't remember.
Why
is it
would
MEA?
they be?
Is it MEA?
It's MEA, but still.
What does that have to do with anything?
If Paul McCartney's in town, why would you do that?
They may not have known it at the time they scheduled the game. And that's not going to exactly conflict. But, the point of the matter is there's going to be a lot of excitement downtown, and Nebraska's rolling into town. And I'm going to be – I've seen McCartney before at Target. Speaking of Target Field, guy never took a drink of water. You talk about an athlete. He's 83 years old.
Unbelievable.
And I never, not a costume change. I'm using that term. Didn't take a drink of water, ran through his whole set and did it all. And here he is doing it again. I'm going, I watched this guy when I was like 9 years old on the Ed Sullivan Show in 1964 with a little group called the Beatles. And he's still doing it. And I have a lot of admiration, Kevin. I really do. When I've gone to see some of these superstar rockers who continue to do it. Springsteen, we're talking about, he's got a new movie coming out. We were just talking about before he went on the show. Not quite as old as Paul McCartney, but man, these guys are athletes.
They are. I watched Neil Diamond for years.
Oh,
been
another
about
one.
15 of his concerts, and he was well into his 70s. To your point, never taking a break, playing for almost 3 hours.
They don't
and I'm
need
like,
the money. I mean,
how do these guys do it?
Yeah, it is.
It's going to be that. You're right. Friday. And we're playing a game in Washington.
That's right.
Kaprizov and Ovechkin going toe-to-toe.
Oh, fun.
But Nebraska, 8.5-point favorite.
That skyrocketed, too. It started at 4.5 or something.
So the early money clearly on the Huskers. And I think Minnesota can move the football. Their quarterback has been a pleasant surprise.
Yeah.
What's been disappointing is their defense. I mean, bad teams are moving the football. Purdue is not a good team.
They ran 175 yards in the first half or something like that.
I'm worried about
they found a way to win.
The Gopher defense. And then you've got the whole storyline now with the Nebraska coach, Matt Rule, maybe being the next Penn State coach. So there's
a Pennsylvania guy. Yeah.
A lot of storylines around this game, and they get a big old, spotlight on a Friday night for PJ to put his program out there. Can't hurt in the area of recruiting either.
From McCartney to McCarthy, Friday night to Sunday. Except one will definitely be playing at U.S. Bank. The other one probably won't be playing at U.S. Bank. And it's an interesting story. And the reason I bring up JJ is because we're watching some of these quarterbacks kind of getting their second wind and having such great, starting with Baker Mayfield. And obviously Sam Darnold is playing well. And, and what's going on around the league. JJ's had a rough beginning from a health standpoint. And patience is something a lot of fans just don't have anymore. They want it, and they want it now. And yet, you look at the scope of what it takes to be a successful NFL quarterback, and of course, you have exceptions to the rule. Jalen Daniels and Drake May and Bo Nix. Even Caleb Williams, ups and downs. But McCarthy's got to get healthy before he has a chance to play. He just has to. He can't go. He hasn't even had a full week of practice yet.
You got to do what's right by the young man, and nobody knows more than that. KOC will figure this out, and luckily they were able to get a guy in Carson Wentz that can at least be a Band-Aid until you get this kid healthy. But the last thing you want to do is force him in with an offensive line that's been hit or miss at best, and ask him to be mobile when he's not 100%, and maybe really lose him completely for this year. If you give it one more week, maybe it's 2 more weeks, and you let this kid get some practice time, Rosie, which is valuable, some chemistry built back up with the team. I just think right now, the longer you can take to let him settle in, the better. And then when he comes back, you got to play him the rest of the year. You need to see him this year because, let's be honest, this team's not a Super Bowl team. It's just not.
No.
So you want to find out what this kid has this year so you can build around him appropriately next year.
And listening to to KOC talk, it's not just the ankle at the moment. I mean, it's the mechanics. I mean, he's got to work on, and that happens in practice, and it happens in the reps you have in games.
For sure.
I mean, you look at what's gone on with the Twins, getting back to the Twins a little bit, Byron Buxton, Royce Lewis. Buxton had a pretty healthy year this year. Look at the numbers he put up. Unfortunately, no one was paying attention to it because the team tanked. Royce Lewis is another one going, wait, was he the number 1 overall pick? I mean,
he looked like it for a while.
And they can, well, are we
playoff
supposed to give up on him right now?
No chance.
No, you can't. I mean, there's too many examples. Even look at that guy like Polanco, not the same sort of hype that Buxton and Royce Lewis have, but some of these guys just take longer to develop. Anyway, I don't know what, McCarthy and look, it's up to the Vikings to give him an opportunity when it strikes, and to see that may be 3-4 weeks down the road. I thought he might play this week. Coming off the bye, I thought,
and he still might. They haven't said he isn't.
No, but
if you read the tea leaves, it does seem doubtful.
He hasn't had a full week of practice.
No,
KOC is not going to put him out there against the Eagles without a full week of practice. I just can't see it, and I'd love to see him. Everybody would. Can you imagine? But then it's a nice revenge story with Carson Wentz coming.
It's hilarious, actually.
And the Eagles are struggling right now. They're going to try to run the ball 80 times with Saquon Barkley because they can't throw the ball right now.
Well, their offensive line has been worse than the Vikings, if you can believe that. And we all know the struggles that our line has had with the injuries they've suffered. But the Eagles really can't get anything going on offense. You've got a very disgruntled A.J. Brown. You've got Saquon Barkley, who was the highest scoring player in fantasy last year. He's not even in the top 20 for running backs this year. And it all comes back to the line of scrimmage. Like, if you're going to have success on the offensive side, it starts with the men up front. It starts with the offensive line. And the teams that don't have it are really struggling. And both the Eagles and Vikings have struggled mightily. And this feels like a very low-scoring 20-16 type of game. And I guess, if JJ's got to wait another week, you can win a game like that with Carson Wentz.
Well, you don't have to wait another week. You have to play Thursday night against the Chargers in L.A., and then you go to Detroit after that.
Boy.
It's not an easy situation. They knew that going into it, to say, okay, kid, go get him. And the Lions did lose to Kansas City the other night, but I'm watching that game going,
they're better than us.
They are really, really good.
They are.
They have their offensive scheme, and I know they have a lot of defensive injuries as well, and that seems to be the storyline. It seems like every single week, and that is a great equalizer. These guys, the teams, even the elite teams that get hurt, you're second because of the salary cap. You're the guys that come in after them. They're wearing the uniform, but they're not as good, and so that's why I never eliminate even like a team like Minnesota to say, well, they can't win it. Yeah, their defense is damn good if they're healthy. Getting Cashman back is big. Missing Van Ginkel is even bigger.
Huge.
That's a big problem. But their defense can keep them in a lot of games and they get healthy. They just absolutely can.
And to your point, Rosie, the NFL there's parity everywhere. Like, there's upsets every week. Chicago goes into Washington and wins. Atlanta buries Buffalo. And so I think if you're thinking about this and you're KOC this week, play Carson Wentz against his former team. Give J.J. McCarthy that window of practice time. And then on a short week, rather than bring the old guy back, let's just say he gets sacked 3, 4, 5 times on Sunday afternoon. Maybe now on the short week, you've got a fresh young guy that's had some practice time, that's eager to get back out there. And then you bring J.J. for Thursday Night Football, and maybe that's the segue to get him back into the mix. Bottom line is they've got to get him out there at some point to see what they have this year. This is such an important year for J.J. McCarthy's development.
Especially after missing all of last year.
Yep.
100%. And speaking of segues, being a movie guy, I was really saddened, and I think a lot of us were shocked by the loss of Diane Keaton. I mean, after Robert Redford passed and then Diane Keaton, I'm going, man, I grew up with her. I grew up with her movies with Woody Allen. I mean, and actually going back to The Godfather.
That's the one for me. My dad sat me down and said, I got to a certain age.
She's such an underplayed role, too, as
so good.
Corleone's wife.
Everything she was ever in. I remember the movie with Jack Nicholson later in life. Just everything she was in. She was so, so good. And I didn't see it coming. Like, when Robert Redford passed away, it was super sad. Some of, my very favorite movies going back to The Sting included Robert Redford. But then, like, I didn't even know Diane Keaton was sick. And at 79, way too young to be gone, and really sad indeed.
Well, and it was, and obviously family is first, and their family wanted to keep it, and she did in particular, keep it rather private, to say the least, whatever she had and was going through. That's why it was shocking for a lot of us. I go back to, Played Against Sam and Annie Hall and Father of the Bride and First Wives Club, and you go on and on and on. But that, I think her on-screen presence was sort of the way she probably was in real life. I mean, just that laugh of hers.
Kind of quirky and funny. Yeah. She just had a great way about her.
Yeah. So, you realize, we go as just rubes like us going to watch the movies. I've, been a big part of my life, but you feel a closeness, you feel an attachment
You do.
to a lot of these people, whether it's a Redford or Diane Keaton, and you feel that loss. You just do, because they're part of our lives. And it's also, you kind of check your own kind of, mortality a little bit and realize, man, appreciate all of our days that we have, whether we're
For sure.
watching the Wild, whether we're talking about my fantasy football team losing to yours by 2 points. Damn it. Whatever. No, seriously, whatever it might be. It's that lesson learned for sure, just to enjoy our lives and the ones that mean the most to us.
For sure.
Gorgie, thanks so much for stopping over, and looking forward to chatting with you down the road.
Looking forward to that as well, Rosie, and enjoy a big weekend of Paul McCartney and more great sports.
Exactly. Thanks for listening. Rosen Sports Monday.